Hey, I am Ceres, and this is Human Path to Sovereignty, the channel that focuses on sovereignty, relationship to self, others, community, and how that can lead to true prosperity, not just success. So I just finished creating a free workbook, Unlock Prosperity Through Sovereign Relationships. It gives you 5 super digestible aspects to reflect on and integrate so you can access more prosperity in all forms, including more fulfilling relationships. This is your next step if you want more support with what I have to offer. So grab it right now. I think this video can be really helpful for many relationships. So please share this or post it if it resonates, because this channel is about gradually shifting our relationships to sovereignty for the good of all. In order to do this, we need to start sharing our insights with people in our lives. I'm not going to ask you to share all my videos, but this one seems important and just useful for anyone. Part of what I think makes relationships sovereign is being able to have these conversations about the relationship that you're in instead of just making assumptions. Now, this video is about venting. Now, I hear people speak about this, and as a neurodivergent person, it doesn't occur to me that people use it in the same way. And this can feel really maddening to me because I want us to understand each other, and it's hard when we can use different meanings to words, and I understand that this happens in all languages, and also words evolve, and they evolve with their meaning. And I am hyper-focused on language and meaning and in human psychology and behavior. It can be maddening for some people in my life, and also it can create really nuanced content for you. So here we go. When I search for the definition of vent, sometimes it leans towards complaining, and sometimes it leans more towards sharing negative emotion. I want to speak about the possibilities of what someone may mean when they're talking about someone venting, the difference between these two things, what to do about it, and how to protect your energy, and some sneaky perspectives that I haven't heard discussed anywhere. So you want to stay till the end so you understand all the pieces so you can actually use this in your life. I came across a post recently where people were discussing the impact of venting and how important it is to ask if somebody wants advice, and the damaging effects of someone venting and alternatives they can do, like find gratitude or journal or engage in activities, seek professional help, problem solving, mindfulness practices, and communicating with I statements. And although I like all of those things, I think humanity is in crisis. We aren't able just to be with each other, especially if someone is going through something challenging, especially if they are in personal growth world. It's so hard for people just to be with someone else's experience. Newsflash, this means it's hard for people to be with themselves. Now, in conscious and spiritual communities, it is a nightmare to share negative emotion or problem with someone who's facing, because everyone around you wants to tell you what worked for them, to redirect you, to encourage you, to tell you don't need to feel that way, save, sell, fix, and just general superiority of just saying that, oh, I don't have that problem, or I don't have that problem anymore, etc., etc. And they aren't able just to be. And yet there's so much magic in that being, and the lack of being is actually highlighting where they need to grow too. So although there are some really good points to understand about venting and the impacts of venting in relationships, there are also some important distinctions I want to point out. I wanted to make this video. I'm going to walk you through these 5 key insights to create sovereign relationships and more nourishing connections. Number 1, the difference between complaining and processing. So like I said, I'm not going to use venting, just gets a little confusing. I like to explain things as clear as possible. Let's break down the difference between complaining and processing. So complaining is when someone talks about an issue but doesn't want to move forward with it, right? It's like they're staying stuck in a loop. It's like revisiting the same story over and over without any intention of finding resolution or deeper understanding. And it's often making, someone or something wrong, even if it's themselves. It's almost like the person can take some sort of pleasure in revisiting it. And, they often don't want to take responsibility for what's occurred or is occurring. Even if someone's doing something to them, they're still able to take some responsibility by removing themselves, by processing their emotion. Now, processing, on the other hand, is about being with an experience to move through it. It's not just talking about the problem, but feeling, embodying, understanding, healing, and ultimately integrating. Processing may or may not involve problem solving. The person sharing would guide it naturally if that's what they want, but ultimately it allows the soul to be witness so that the issue can organically flow towards integration. There is responsibility in processing. Now I'm going to be bringing up responsibility throughout this video as it is necessary to create sovereign relationships and prosperity. I want to share an example from last year. I had conflict with my brother and it really impacted me at my core, and I shared it with people close to me. I was in the US at the time, and a couple weeks later, I returned to Mexico. Now, I had shared with a friend the cliff notes of my trip, and he inquired to know more about my situation with my brother. Now, I had already integrated so much through processing that I said I didn't really feel in alignment to share. When I tapped into it, it actually felt like wrong to share. And he actually pushed for me to share after I said I didn't feel necessary, I didn't want to, because he was curious. What happened? He was wanting to know, to feed his curiosity, or shall we say gossip. Now, I was aware enough to check in with myself and know that it was not in service for me to share, even though he was asking what happened. If I had not embodied my emotions and took responsibility for parts of the experience, I may have loved to engage in this conversation with him. Number 2, the soul wants to be witnessed. Here's the key. When someone is processing, the underlying need is for the soul to be witnessed. When the soul isn't truly seen or heard, whatever emotion or struggle is there will continue to circulate. Without being witnessed, the issue remains unintegrated, like a loop that keeps repeating. And this is why simply offering quick fixes or redirecting someone's feelings can feel really dismissive and is ultimately ineffective. Now, of course, if somebody wants advice, they can ask specifically, but many people make the assumption that if someone shares a challenge, that means they want a solution, which is an assumption that is stopping the flow of sovereignty for you and the other person. This is what I mean when I say that codependency is choking out sovereignty in personal growth communities. In typical conversations, there's not much space for the soul. Now, I hear so many people in, conscious communities talk about holding space. And yet, even there, it's a rare experience. Yet that should be what holding space is. I'm going to make another video about this in the future, no worries. So here's an example. When I processed my name change earlier this year, like before I announced it, right? I didn't really have the space to be seen or witnessed or where I was at. I shared it with a few people, and I shared that I was overwhelmed with the process of changing my name, and I was met with advice and redirection. Now, this was a time in my life that I had a lot going on. I was processing a lot. So then to think about, I have to change my name in all these accounts. And then, okay, when can I do it legally? What's the process of that? And then I have to announce it to people in my life. Okay, that's going to be a thing. Like family, particularly, they've known me the longest, and it's something. It's something, right? There's new people in my life. That's the easiest thing. That's just my name. But I was in the stage of my process where I was wrapping my brain around what I was about to do. And if you've never changed your name, you probably hadn't really thought about it, all the details that you need to do. So when I shared this with a few people in, conscious communities, they were telling me, there's no need to feel overwhelmed. And I had mentioned it's going to be a change to be Ceres. Like, it's not a common name, and I don't think it's it's not a hard name, but it's because it's so uncommon, it's not easy, right? And they had said, no, it's super easy. And so they were opposing where I was at in my process. And there was no space to be like, oh, wow, I hear that you're overwhelmed. And yeah, I'm putting myself in your shoes. I can see where that could be overwhelming to kind of look at everything you're about to do next, right? The thing that can be hard to comprehend is that I was not confused or I was not stuck in my process. I simply just wanted to be witnessed with exactly where I was at in my process. I just wanted to share that I felt overwhelmed before I was taking my next step. I knew what the next step was. I didn't have any doubts. I knew that I was going to go forward with it, and I knew that it would all be okay in the end. And I knew that I'd figure out a way of introducing myself in a way that could be more memorable. But in that moment, I was just looking at all the effort and that I needed to do. And it did take effort. That's not a lie. And I was also, again, really had so many things that had just happened to me that I was processing. And I just wanted my humanity to be seen. Now, if one of those people would just kind of heard me, like I gave an example, and not attempted to redirect or tell me that I didn't need to feel a certain way, then I believe I could have moved through that part of my journey quicker. It took me about 4 months to really announce my name and put it out there. Now, I'm not saying this to judge or point fingers, but as an observation, because I believe when people form what I call sovereign community, integration happens naturally, just by being with each other. Now, I'll be explaining more on this channel and in great detail in my books. This is the power of learning how to really witness each other, especially in conscious and spiritual communities where we're almost just have cut off ourselves from our humanity and cut off ourselves from even engaging in other people's humanity. Honestly, I've struggled in recent years, probably like 5 years. I've kind of pulled back from conscious and spiritual communities now, obviously not entirely, but I've pulled back a lot because it's been so draining not to feel like there's space for my humanity. It's like in the efforts to transcend and awaken, our humanity has just been lost. And that's why this channel is called Human Path to Sovereignty. By allowing your soul and the other souls to be truly witnessed, I believe this is the fastest, most effective way to integrate and live fulfilled and embodied. And without it, we're just chasing our tails and engaging in personal growth theater and in stroking our own ego as the wounded healer. I have a lot of experience with that, trying to save the world when we aren't truly embodying sovereignty. Now, it's not that any of the common methods of doing personal growth aren't doing anything. It's just that the typical way of interacting with ourselves and others is choking out sovereignty. Number 3, your ability to be with others reflects your connection to self. Now, your ability to be with someone else's experience is always limited by your own disconnection from self. I say that so many times. If you find it difficult to sit with someone else's feelings, that discomfort is likely pointing to parts of yourself that aren't fully connected to or haven't been processed yet. Now, we all have so much stuff that hasn't been processed yet, even in spiritual and conscious communities. Now, this disconnection can show up as avoidance, impatience, or feeling drained by someone's sharing. It's a reflection of your own inner landscape. So remember, hearing someone both process or complain can feel heavy. But processing feels heavy for someone who can't be with their own negative emotions. The heaviness is coming from their own resistance. Again, I'm talking about someone who is sharing their experience in the energy of personal responsibility as a human that needs to be witnessed. We all need to be witnessed in our humanity. We're all humans among other things. And it's important to remember that we can't mindset our way out of feeling our emotions. If the emotions are there, they need to be witnessed and felt, so that they can naturally flow through you. And that's where I feel like a lot of personal growth seekers can create a trap for themselves. The urge to fix and save and tell someone what you did can give you a sense of validation or importance by helping someone. Oh, we all have to admit that we do this as healers and coaches and leaders. Come on. I've done it a lot. Let's be honest with ourselves here. But we need to understand that it can be used as a deflection to actually be with the discomfort of your own feelings while being with someone else. So part of sovereignty is getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sovereignty is not about feeling positive or being perfect. It's about accepting and being with the beautiful messiness of yourself and fellow humans. Practice being and feeling your own experience. Practice being intimate with yourself every day. And when you're really present with someone else, it can be a truly transformative experience for both of you. But if you're feeling heavy, again, it may not be because of the emotions, but your resistance to go there. And you can blame the other person. And it could be true. They might be complaining, but they also might be processing. The more you start to tune in, instead of just thinking about venting, are they processing or are they complaining? It'll become a lot more clear, the difference. Number 4, deepening your capacity leads to prosperity. This is not a yes/no thing. This is a journey. So just in the last month, I've gone further down the rabbit hole with this, and let me tell you, it is opening up so much more for me. The more you deepen your capacity to be with your own experience, moment by moment, the more you'll see true prosperity in your life. And I go into great detail about this about how you can do this in my book. Not just an unrelatable step-by-step process, but something everyone can use, and you'll understand how you can do it on your unique journey, because it is unique. And your capacity to be with the moment is the most understated aspect of personal growth. This goes beyond emotional well-being and impacts relationships, abundance in all forms, and overall sense of fulfillment. Why isn't anyone speaking about this? If you're caught up in chasing success, not real prosperity, it won't be important to you. And many people create success through hard work, discipline, their unconscious ego strategies, and ambition. But that doesn't mean they're truly prosperous. And yes, I'm talking about personal growth leaders here. And people you likely follow. An added layer of complexity is that many of these people are teaching manifestation techniques. It's going to start becoming more obvious who's doing this as we are moving into an era of transparency. We're already freaking in it, you guys. And oh yeah, I'm writing this thick-ass book exhaustively explaining all of this in great detail. Sign up for that so you can know when it comes out. Success can be achieved without full integration. And if you're not integrating these parts of yourself that need to be seen and witnessed, you'll never experience real prosperity. Outward success doesn't equate inner alignment. Aligning with what is, being able to fully witness and process, opens the door to prosperity because it allows you to live in harmony with the deeper truth of your life and purpose. Alignment with the divine. So this video isn't just about being a better friend, it's about living more in alignment with your path and purpose. In turn, you're going to show up with so much more depth and love in all of your relationships. Number 5, boundaries and responsibility. Oh, boundaries. That's what most people think about when I say sovereignty, right? Boundaries. There are 2 parts of this. In the post I referred to, the impact of having someone in your life that vents constantly does have a negative impact. I agree with that. If someone is complaining, I want to use that word again, and not taking responsibility for life, then that is a real bummer to be around. Now, their soul is probably not being witnessed, but there is also something they're getting from staying in that loop as well. There are payoffs like gaining attention, avoiding change, bonding through negativity, justifying an action, feeling superior, righteous, deflecting emotions, reinforcing victim identity, to name a few. Now, I want to give an example. I have a family member that sometimes shares with a strong flavor of complaining. Now, it's stories that I've heard for many years, and I've grown, and I have learned to say, hey, can we pause? This feels really heavy to me. I'm starting to feel anxiety with you sharing this. I'm not going to be able to listen to it. I set a boundary because the truth is I'm not going to listen to a story that I've heard for decades when someone isn't taking responsibility to integrate and move on. Now, the last time I shared this boundary, they said, well, who am I supposed to talk to about this? And I said, well, I'm here to listen if you want to process as you move through it, but I don't want to hear you complain about it. And if you've been speaking about it for years, then you are not moving through it. And they said, oh, I guess I didn't think there was a difference. And they started to reflect on it. Now, the conversation ended on that note. They weren't angry, and I wasn't resentful for listening when I didn't want to, right? Cleaning up your resentment is super important in your relationships. Don't do things that you don't want to do. Now, I was not intending to have a teaching moment because I know a lot of people in conscious and spiritual communities try to do that, although it sort of turned out that way because they asked me. What was important for me was in the relationship is that I set this boundary for myself. Now, I love this person and they don't always complain, but sometimes they do, and I now have a boundary with that. You have sovereignty over your life. Now, you can set boundaries with anyone at any time, including someone that is complaining and not taking responsibility for their life. This will obviously clean up your energy to be a more fuller version of you. Now, I am going to own that I have done this in the past. And I'd say even up to like 5 years ago, I remember I had some intense things happen to me. And I remember asking a friend, like, does it feel, I know it's hard for you to listen to what's going on for me, but does it feel like I'm taking responsibility? And I remember her saying, yeah, it does. And this is why being in relationships is so helpful to have that reflection and to know. Now, it's easy for me to have this story with this person in my life because it's much more clear when I remember someone doing it to me versus me doing it to someone else. And I want to share and admit that I have gotten caught up in complaining about things that I haven't really wanted to fix in the past as well. Now, some of you are thinking, I never complain. Well, maybe you do this one. So when someone is taking responsibility for their life and wanting to process a tough experience, because they're human, and you're like, oh my God, this is too much for me. I can't handle it. This is them. They shouldn't be sharing so many negative emotions with me. Is it them, or is it that you are too backlogged with things that you haven't processed yet? Is it because you've disconnected from these parts in yourself that it's hard for you to be with this person? So what if they are taking full responsibility, but you are still don't want to hear it? Again, you have sovereignty over your life. You can set boundaries with anyone, anytime, including someone who's sharing negative emotions in a sovereign way. But here's the difference. I invite you to take responsibility that it's not about their negative emotions. It's about your inability to be with yourself and others at that level. And side note, I believe that your level of intimacy you have with yourself is the equivalent, a level of intimacy that you have with the divine. So this is going to be reflected back to you in your relationships. And it could be reflected back in you being like, oh, I don't want to go there. So I just want to point out that there could be a judgment about that other person just having feelings, just being human, just having vulnerability. So just like you want the complainer to take responsibility, I invite you to take responsibility for why you can't be with others. This isn't about right or wrong or even shame. It's about naming what is, because that is sovereign. Perhaps you still haven't integrated some trauma from childhood. That is okay. Perhaps you never want to integrate that trauma. That's okay too, because that is your choice. You can still be honest with yourself about what's coming up for you in these interactions and take responsibility, at least take responsibility for the reason. That in itself will give you more access to your power. It's important to give us all some grace with our humanness, even if that means taking distance in a relationship. Now, I've highlighted some of the benefits of being in sovereign community and how it can lift us up to be more embodied and more fulfilled. Creating sovereign community in your life takes intention, and the people that are agreeing to it are agreeing to show up in their messy humanness and love and personal responsibility. Woo! It ain't easy though, it ain't easy. And many people don't want to do this, but perhaps you do. The next steps to unlock prosperity through sovereign relationships is by grabbing my free workbook. You can do that right now. Let me go into the conclusion. Let's recap. 5 important aspects to be aware of. Number 1, the difference between complaining and processing. Start to know the difference. Number 2, know that the soul wants to be witnessed when people are sharing. 3, your ability to be with others reflects your connection to self. 4, deepening your capacity leads to prosperity. 5, boundaries and responsibility. Again, please share this, post this, help this get it out there to others, because we can start transforming how we engage with one another. We can start integrating more gracefully through the world, for those who want to do it, of course, because it's a sovereignty. We live the way that we desire. But if you've been feeling like the typical personal growth practices haven't been getting you to where you want to be, I imagine because there's a lack of sovereignty. And the good news is, there's something you can do about it. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will have another video next week.